1957 would be the year that birthed what would become one of the most prolific serial killers in Colombia. Today we explore the story of Luis Alfredo Garavito, also known as the Beast. Luis was born on January 25, 1957 to parents Rosa Cubillos and Manuel Garavito. Luis was the eldest of 7 children with 3 brothers and 3 sisters. From all accounts, Luis had a difficult childhood and his parents had what seemed to be a testing and difficult relationship. He was both physically and emotionally abused by his father and stated that his father would constantly drink excessively and would be unfaithful to his mother. Luis was also subjected to emotional abuse and neglect from his mother and described her as being violent. Due to a small political war in the country at the time, the family were forced to relocate to Silon in Val de Cauca. Luis and his siblings were constantly exposed to domestic abuse between their parents, and on one occasion, when Luis was around 6 or 7, he recalls an incident when he actually had to step in to defend his mother from being beaten by his father, and because of that, his father strapped him to a tree and began beating him with a tree branch. The beatings got so bad that he and his siblings would hide immediately upon Mr. Garavito's return from work. As a child, Luis was constantly bad-mouthed by his father and was called several derogatory insults. He would only be taken along with Mr. Garavito to work and run errands. In school, Luis was described as an introvert, although he also had a violent temper. He was bullied severely by other children and they would call him Garabato, which translates to squiggle, because he wore glasses and was fearful of the kids who would bully him. Whilst it was no secret that Luis was being bullied, the teachers actually didn't make any attempts to put a stop to this, so as expected, that further aggravated Luis. When Luis was around 7 years of age, his father had pulled him out of school and pushed him into employment to financially support the family. A year later, Luis would accompany his father on one of his routine visits to the drugstore where he would get his vaccinations. It was on this visit that Luis would encounter a very vicious attack by the store owner and also someone Mr. Garavito respected. The store owner would tie Luis to a bed before burning him with a candle, cutting him with a razor and biting him violently. This angered and traumatized Luis and would result to him taking his anger out by killing and dissecting birds. He would also begin to assault his siblings, which his parents allegedly overlooked. In 1971, the family would relocate to the town of Trujillo, and he encountered further assaults. After this, Luis was determined to experience relationships with women, though his aggressive and persistent approach would cause for his advances to be rejected. One day, Luis attempted to sexually assault a 6-year-old boy at a train station, although authorities were alerted by the screams of the boy and he was quickly placed under arrest. Mr. Garavito was angered by the fact that Luis had tried to assault a boy and not a woman, and because of his sexuality, Luis was kicked out of the home. As Luis grew older, he would begin to show signs of depression, psychosis, and paranoia as a result of the abuse he had suffered in his childhood. During this time, he would continue to assault children of both sexes, but predominantly boys. Luis would write the name of his victims in a blue notebook and would pray for them. He would often refer to the Bible in search for answers as to why he would continue to commit these crimes. He would frequently have nightmares and wake up crying before bursting into laughter, remembering the excitement he experienced during these assaults. Between the years of 1980 and 1992, Luis is believed to have assaulted at least 200 boys. Shockingly, he spent 5 of these years under psychiatric care. Luis developed an obsession with Hitler, admiring the similarities of their adverse childhood experiences. He also grew fond of Colombian spree killer Campo Elias Delgado and was inspired by his mass murder and the attention this received. Luis eventually planned to commit a mass murder in the presence of journalists, anticipating losing his life during the attack. Luis's victims were poor children and generally between the ages of 6 and 16.
You don't see many homeless adults in Colombia. You see homeless children. There's a large population of street children. They're caught up in a special subculture, and it's increasingly a violent one. And they disappear, and no one notices.
He would lure them in by offering gifts or sums of money. When the children trusted him, he would take them for a walk until they got tired and would take advantage of them.
His victim choice of young boys clearly points to the fact that he had a fantasy of becoming involved with young boys. This was his preferred victim type, and that he needed to become intimately involved with these boys. That he needed to bind them in a certain way is suggestive of his sadistic fantasies. This is someone who needs to feel godlike.
Louis would sexually assault them, slit their throats, and dismember their bodies. When he was eventually captured in April 1999, he confessed to the murder of 140 children. However, he is still being investigated for the murders of 172 other children. Louis's confession was a relief to authorities, although they needed more substantial evidence, and so when Louis left his cell, they saw their opportunity. Detectives took DNA samples from his pillow and his living area, which was a match to the sample of the victims. Louis was then found guilty of 138 murders, which would equate to the sentence of 1,853 years, though the maximum sentence in Colombian law is 30 years. As Louis was compliant and helped authorities to locate the bodies, his sentence was lowered to 22 years. The people of Colombia were furious about Louis' sentence and argued that he should either receive the death penalty or life in prison, though neither of these are supported by the Colombian law. Louis currently serves his sentence in a maximum security prison in Colombia. For his own safety, Louis is separated from other prisoners as it is highly likely he would be targeted by other inmates. He has served 23 years in prison and will be eligible for parole just next year in 2023. My thought is that Louis was set up to fail from the word go. He lived in a hostile environment as a child and was exposed to violence between his parents. I believe it's unfortunate that Louis didn't get the right support after the abuse, which left him seriously traumatized and led him to inflict pain onto others as a way of getting back at the world. Regardless, this is no excuse for murdering or killing children from 6 to 16. That's crazy to me. But that's all we have on today's story. Please let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments below, and also feel free to leave any suggestion on cases you would like for me to cover. Thank you. Bye.